we're just gonna be so energetic in here that people are gonna just want to come in and go, what in the world's going on there? That must be the smart people on the Smart City panel. That's right. So, good morning. Thank you for taking time. We've got a tremendous amount of knowledge and talent on the stage, and thank you all four gentlemen for taking the time to share your expertise and your knowledge with us. Really want to be able to have an open dialogue, open conversation. So if you guys have a question in the midst of something, just raise your hand and we'll get that. We'll take that question throughout the conversation instead of waiting to the end. And I had a question and now I can't remember it. And so let's just raise your hand. I'll start with introducing myself. My name is David Coddington. I'm Vice President of Business Development with the Greater Fort Lauderdale Alliance, which is the principal economic development organization that represents all of Broward County and all 31 cities. We work with Enterprise Florida that markets the state for business, and we focus on attracting companies from around the globe that are creating jobs in the target industries. Technology is one of those target industries, and I focus on technology. We also work with companies that are here that are creating jobs in those target industries to retain and not just attract, but we want to keep the companies that we have here as well. So with that being said, let's start with, I'm going to just ask each gentleman just to introduce themselves and tell a little bit about themselves and the company they work with. So, Carlos.
Good morning. My name is Carlos Marquez. I'm the Director of Engineering for Mastec of North America. Mastec Utility Service Group builds the underground aerial infrastructure for primarily telecom and power distribution. And I have nearly 20 years in the telecom industry and 4 years with Mastec. I'm really excited to be here and representing the company, and also want to hear from this gentleman here as a learner, and also if I can serve anybody with my knowledge, that'll be great.
And Mastec's got another little thing. I got to plug this because I like it. Enter Miami Soccer. So got a little investment besides fiber and all that type of stuff. So that stadium is going up quick, and it's going to be a smart stadium, I hope, right?
Of course.
Okay. Yes. Stan.
Hi, my name is Stan Schultes. My company is called Spark Growth. We are an innovation consulting firm located in the Tampa Bay area. We work with agile strategies and do a lot of business development work, and have been working in the smart city space for the last probably 4 years. What we had been doing up until the middle of the summer was co-producing smart cities innovation accelerators with an initiative out of Harvard. So doing smart city programs, bringing city leaders, CIOs, and other leaders together across North America, Europe, and Asia to talk about the things that are happening in smart cities and begin looking for solutions. So I did a lot of the workshop design, hands-on development work, and now have launched a program in Florida called Towards Smarter Communities. We're working with local government leaders, encouraging them to work together, across boundaries. We're boundary spanners, and look at what some of the big issues are here in Florida with smart readiness.
Boundary spanners. What was that?
Boundary spanners.
Is that a new name for regionalism?
Well, yes, actually, that's actually a good way to describe it. There's silos everywhere, inside government, outside government, so we span the silos.
Which is really important when you're working with elected officials. They might have gotten elected to an office and have great knowledge of some other things, but most likely not knowledge about what a smart city would look like.
All the answers are not in one place. You have to look across, and lots of different people are doing lots of different things. So bringing together the best ideas is really what we're about.
So speaking of elected officials, we're not elected official, but Lenny with Broward County. Go ahead.
So I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for Broward County, and basically our goal is to use data to get to better decisions, and a lot of the data is in silos. Innovation means not being afraid to iterate in public, which means that we're not going to just plan forever. We want to implement and try things and then keep iterating on those until we end up with something that people can use and that helps them get around the county better. And this idea that we need to understand what is possible, what we can do, and then inform the public and work with them and use outreach and work with our partners and a lot of other very intelligent people we have in this community to figure out what we should do and build something that works for Broward.
So would you say that, and we'll get into this a little more deeper, but the data that you're collecting, almost like a big data?
The telecom industry, primarily we work for all the carriers out there. We build fiber networks and your 5G that's so popular today. So we're building that across the nation. Huge initiative. Small cells is primarily what I'll be talking about today, and the benefits, pros and cons, and some of the misconceptions of small cells. We've been doing it since 2013. We've been building the small cell networks, although it's popular now, but since 2013, it's been an initiative that's been going on, and very exciting. You know, 5G and the fiber build outs for smart cities. Very exciting. A lot of great things out of the new technologies that are out there.
Sounds good. All right, so let's kind of figure out what smart cities really are. What does that necessarily mean? Does that mean public Wi-Fi? Does that mean infrastructure? Does that mean autonomous cars? Karel, you mentioned about small cells, but if each one of you guys could say, how would you describe what the functions, I shouldn't say functions, the key components of a smart city? So, Carlos, you want to start?
Under my perspective, smart city is the integration of all these network elements, the ones that we know about now: sensors, cameras, smart lighting, smart signalization, and probably billions of other devices that are going to make the citizen and the government aware of many things. That integration of billion devices then obviously has to be, my perspective is it's backhauled through a fiber network and aggregated into hubs through rings and into the cloud. So
okay.
that would be my perspective of smart cities.
And you work with, obviously, you're just saying, a lot of different communities and so forth. What are some of those key components as you are advising these other communities on what a smart city should be for them?
So, having the broad perspective, talking to a lot of city leaders and also a lot of industry partners who interface with them. Carlos's description very much is the technology backbone, the infrastructure, sort of the enablement part of getting data in. So what I would say is really smart. Smart depends on the place that you're at. Every place is different from every other place, and the goals that you're trying to meet are often quite divergent, but they're trying to solve the same kind of problems over and over. In Florida, in particular, the three big things that I find that people are concerned about are transportation systems.
Huge.
Yeah, transportation is always the one that pops up, and sustainability and resilience. So in Florida, we obviously have big storms, and we have sea level rise and other things that are causing resilience issues. But really, what backs that then are the open data systems, and what I would say is that as cities and counties and places start to build out their data systems, they need to think about how to expand that across their own borders. Transportation doesn't end at the county line. It doesn't end at the city board. It continues on to the next place, and what we really need is a continuous system. So the data backends are a big issue, and also then how do you fund it? So those are kind of the issues that cities are facing, but it really covers a lot of things, including waste management, traffic management, water, even the internal systems that cities have. If you want to get permitting or you want to get licenses for something, or just register a business, those all are part of a smart integrated system.
I read an article 10 years ago about the city becoming smart, and it talked about some of that piece of just to the permitting piece, as well as starting getting registered as a company. It should be a lot easier, and we've been working on that platinum permitting here in Broward County with all the cities and trying to make it more streamlined. We'll talk about permitting a little bit later.
But the real point I would make though is that technology is an enabler. It's not a solution. So technology helps build solutions, but it's not the answer. It's an enabler.
Got it. All right. We'll remember that one. Lenny, what you guys are trying to do with Broward County. So what's smart city? How are you looking at it?
So to me, a smart city means awareness and responsiveness and adaptability, right? Like when you're in the natural environment, you know, physicality has this awareness and it's responsive to you, you know, the birds and the trees and the rustling of the grass, and there's a certain, you know, feeling that things make sense, right? Whereas in the built environment, the gray environment, you know, all too often you might pull up at a light and it turns red so that traffic the other way can go, but there's really nobody going the other way. And you're just
never happened to Broward County.
Yeah, right. And it just feels so frustrating, right? And so there's not a lot of awareness in the built environment of your presence, of the presence of people. And so to me, a smart city brings that awareness to the built environment through incorporating sensors and technology to allow that environment to be more responsive to you as a person. Maybe you need a little bit more time crossing the street, maybe you fell down, maybe, you know, there's an issue with the crosswalks and the way that we plan them out, or there aren't crosswalks, or, you know, you need adaptive signalization so that, you know, we can, you know, change the light timing on the fly instead of having it just change because it's time. And so there's this idea that we can use sensors to hopefully make the built environment feel more like the natural environment, to put people more at ease, to make it a better place to live. And my fear is if we don't pursue smart cities, that will become the digital Rust Belt, because, you know, it's this idea that why would you want to live there if you don't have that sensation, if you can't provide that to people, make it easier for them to get places and have more information about how they can get places and what's happening in the community.
Yeah, you know, and so for what we do at the Alliance, you know, as I mentioned, trying to attract companies, and they are opening up a new office, or they're going to be relocating an office. You know, on that technology side, we're working with a couple companies right now, and just huge multinational companies that are looking at South Florida, Fort Lauderdale in particular, and we want to make sure that they don't see us as a digital Rust Belt, right? And that there is a plan here for South Florida, Broward County, to say, you know, we are continuing to move forward and become more digitally connected and be a smart city. So it's a huge, huge piece for us. Karel, why don't you tell us what you think, and then let's dive into the small cell.
Yeah, fine. Obviously, smart cities is everything these gentlemen talked about. Basically, more effective city, more efficient city, more convenient city for the people who live in the city, right? A smart city is going to be a city that allows people who live in it to do more in a faster period of time. Get from point A to point B faster. Get information faster. Find out things faster. It's all about faster and convenience. That's what a smart city is. On the, you know, the constituent side, on the city governmental side is more safety, more awareness of where the hot spots, trouble spots are, right? You know, you've got this system that can track a gunshot and immediately, you know, get a police officer to the scene through sensors that are put out to the city. So it means better safety for the people of the city. It means that hospitals have access to more information quicker for an accident that happened, and, you know, the patient hasn't even gotten there, but they know everything that's going on. It happens today, but not at the level that, for example, 5G will bring to the smart city. So to me, is three words: convenience, efficiency, and effectiveness. That's what a smart city brings. And, you know, unfortunately, South Florida is not at the forefront of that. We're working to get there, but there's other cities that are way ahead of South Florida, and we need to hurry up and get there. Like Lenny said, we don't want to be the dinosaur. We're a big city. We want to be at the front of the list along with all the other major cities. I mean, we're top 5 in the nation. Let's be that, right? We're not top 5 in smart city right now.
Well, we need to be. So let's, you know, so one of the things that the people, we talk about wireless and you know, and the cloud and cellular. So let's jump into the small cell for a second, because, you know, we had a company in our office, and they lay fiber and so forth, and I asked them, so how's this going to work? I mean, are we going to have like a bunch of these little cells on every bar, on every bench, and every pole, and, you know, and there's a concern you hear from the public about, well, that's going to look, you know, that's going to look you know, it's just not gonna look pleasant. How is this all gonna work? So even though we're talking about a wireless thing, you still need fiber. You still need wires to connect the wireless system. So on the small cells, are we talking about 5 small cells on every pole, every 50 feet? What does this look like?
So, you're right. Every wireless network is wired. There is no such thing as wireless. Okay? Wireless is basically your last mile, if you will, for lack of or ease of understanding, right? You need to first build out your fiber network that will feed all these small cells, and that's a hardwired fiber optic cable from the feeding point to the distribution, right? Then you have your small cells. Well, small cells today, and there's plans of changes in the future, but today, every small cell is owned by the individual carrier. You do not, or let me rephrase, in very few situations do you have 2 carriers on one location. So, as we stand today, a small cell is going to be individually owned by the specific carrier that is at that location. Small cells are typically from 21 feet to 35 feet. That is the range of height that a small cell will be standing at. There's a big misconception on what a small cell is and what a macro cell is. A lot of city officials that we go to do permitting with think that a small cell is this big 200-foot tower that's going to be put on the right-of-way, and now you're talking about putting a bunch of them. They're like, are you crazy? No, a small cell is basically let's call it a power or telephone pole for again, ease of understanding. I wish we would have brought pictures. And they sit from anywhere from 21 to 35 feet high. Most of the time, almost all of you have driven by a small cell. Most of you have not noticed them, right? They are smaller than a transformer on a pole. You can design a small cell any way, in any shape the city likes it. If you want a metal decorative pole that has circles on it with a street light at the antenna on top and it's painted red and green, you can do that. If you want just a basic concrete pole with an obvious antenna on top, that will happen. It doesn't matter the design. So you can design a small cell to the style of the city street lighting, the neighborhoods.
It can look like a tree in a park.
It can look like a tree, look like a palm tree. You can make any design that the cities need or want. So they're easy to hide. The other misconception is that, well, small cells are bad for your health, right? They're bad for humans because of the RF signal. Yes, RF signal is bad for you if you're within 5 feet of it for an extended period of time. But like I told this gentleman before, I have not met a 21-foot or 35-foot tall human being yet. So small cells are not going to affect, my opinion, the general population. Okay, so that is a true misbelief. But what small cells will do is help these smart cities become smart. You cannot get the data fast enough to the end user without a small cell. You've got to reduce the distance between the signal from the antenna to the equipment that's picking it up. And reducing the distance reduces latency, and it's all about latency. You can't have a fast smart city without it.
So describe latency.
So latency is the delay of the data transmission from point A to point B. In a more basic term.
You really want data to be instantaneous, right?
Yes, you can't push a button now or type a word help and have it take 2 minutes before it gets to the other person. You want it to be as instantaneous as possible. 5G will be doing that.
So let's get into the piece of, so again, and guys jump on and this. So, when you guys are consulting with folks, and so again, I would say the conversations that I have about Smart City with the folks in our office or in general, the biggest thing is transportation, mobilization, right? Like, oh my God, like you're saying, I cannot believe I'm sitting at this light for 5 minutes, and I'm gonna go up to the next light, and it's gonna be another 5 minutes. But, so how often do you need these small cells? Because as we are looking towards autonomous vehicles, are they every 50 feet? Are they every 150 feet? how does that work? And you stand to, with, you know, when you're looking at other communities or any of you guys, you work across the country, what does that look like? I mean, is mobilization, transportation, like, so smart cities are a bunch of different things. So is transportation, mobilization typically the main priority that they go after first, or do you try to do everything all at the same time? Right, so two questions. One is, how many of these, how far in between you have to have all these cells? And how does that affect our transportation system? And is that typically, you know, the number one priority when you start?
So it really depends on the density, the turf that you're in. Population density, if you're in the downtown areas, you're going to have more of these small cells present because with the denser population, more traffic, more usage. Once you start going west in Broward County, you're going to see less of these. So that would be like the variable of the presence of these small cells. You could also mount a small cell, so not just on the pole, but you can mount it on the rooftop, you know, one or two story rooftop.
So in the city, are we talking every 150 feet, every 200 feet?
So, depending on the carrier. Some carriers want a small cell between 600 and 1,000 feet. Some carriers want it between 300 and 500 feet. Some carriers want it between 100 and 300 feet. So, unfortunately, I can't say which is which, but let's say between, you know, 300 feet apart to 1,000 feet apart is where a small cell needs to be.
Stan, what do you see when you work in the community?
So there's really, to keep it simple, there's really three components in the transportation system as far as the sensors and data are required. So you have roadside sensors knowing where the traffic is and where it's flowing, what it's doing, and the signalization and all this stuff. So it's the sensors that are fixed in place. They need to pass their signal on, right? But they're not moving. The next piece is the vehicles themselves. So we talk about autonomous vehicles. They're not really here yet. Today, it's connected vehicles. It's, if you buy a car today, typically, it's gonna generate terabytes of data a day. You know, it's got cameras, it's got, you know, think of a Tesla, it's got cameras, it's got all kinds of other sensors in it. So it can communicate to the infrastructure and also get signals back from the infrastructure. And then the third component is the people. So, you know, the citizen is the sensor now. You know, so we're all moving around within the transportation system, and it wants to track us and know where we are.
Like Waze.
And we want to interact with the mobility as a service system or whatever. You know, so there's this moving component, not just on streets, but sidewalks, buildings, and everywhere else. So there really needs to be a complete coverage over you know, the entire metropolitan area. So, you know, a small cell really needs to be ubiquitous.
So one of the things we talked about, we had a conversation yesterday, is that you know, to your point, you know, these cars are getting more connected and so forth. I got my most recent car. I got in and all of a sudden it flashed up on my screen or whatever that, oh, the speed limit is 35. I'm like, how does the car know that the speed limit on this road is 35 miles an hour? And then I go to another one, now it's 45. I was like, wow, that's crazy. It's a little scary at the same time. My car knows more than I do, but I mean, it's pretty nuts. So Lenny, you talked about some of this stuff. You'd be able to track things. One of the things, you know, to maybe calm down road rage. You were talking about how the signal might let a person know how much time they have to be at the light. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Right, so, you know, when I was growing up, I remember, you know, the internet wasn't a thing at first, and then when it came out, it was, you know, the information superhighway, right? It was the place where you could get all this access to information, and now that it's so ubiquitous, you know, you start looking at the roadways, which are the things that connect us and allow us to get where we need to go, and, you know, to feed our families and, you know, take care of them, and so you can, I think when you look at small cells and you look at, you know, connected vehicles and autonomous vehicles, and there's just a tremendous amount of information on the roadways today, and a tremendous need for people to get access to information about where they're going, how they're getting there, how safe it is. You know, is there an accident? Is there a vehicle broken down? And so when you look at roadways, you can, you know, they're the new information superhighways, right? Those are places and opportunities for people to connect and be able to understand how they can interact with the environment. And so, you know, one of the things is when it's frustrating and not responsive. So the first thing that, like, my job is to get you information when you're commuting, so that hopefully it will be maybe a little bit less stressful, right? And so sometime next year, just depending on what vehicle you might own, we're putting out the information about our traffic signal timing, and the vehicle manufacturers are able to grab that information and then beam it to your vehicle, much like you were talking about with connected vehicles over like 4G, or if you had 5G, that technology as well. And so as you approach a light, your vehicle might tell you that it's about to turn red, and how much longer it will be before it turns red. Or if you're at a red light, it might tell you it'll count down how many seconds before the light's going to turn green. So you have a better understanding of, you know, when something is going to happen. And also the vehicle will be able to let you know, hey, the speed limit's 45, but if you went 37, you might catch the next 4 green lights based on traffic flow.
Oh, that's cool, right?
And so you'll start to get more information about what's happening out there, right? And so, you know, when you talk about, you know, latency and things like that, you know, the way I like to think of it is, you know, depending on how powerful your car is, it's that lag between when you hit the gas pedal and it actually starts moving, right? So that's the lag that, you know, if it responded immediately, that would be much more reassuring and much more satisfactory, and you're not in danger while you're waiting for your car to move because you thought you were going to get in that lane, and now all of a sudden that other car is bearing down on you, right? So to me, that's the advantage that you have, and we're putting fiber in all over the county as part of the transportation surtax to connect these sensors and these adaptive signals to allow immediate response times, right? To allow things to happen very quickly, so that we eliminate that lag time between when we see something and when we're able to respond to it. And they say, and we're partnering with Waze to give people information about road closures countywide. I remember one day I went on Fort Lauderdale's website, they had 53 road closures that day alone. Multiply that by 31 cities. How do people get access to that information? Does somebody have to go and get stuck at the road closure to tell Waze, and then you're not going to have Waze to know about it? So we want to be able to push that information out in multiple different ways, so we can collate all of that information in one place and push it out, and you'll be able to understand a little bit about that part of your commute.
If you could send a signal to the person that's on I-95 in the left lane going 45 miles an hour that they need to get off the lane, that would be awesome.
You know,
Go ahead.
It's funny because we all want this great technology, right, that we're talking about. There's a lot more out there, but then, you know, going back to the small cells, you go to permanent city, and I know I'm getting into your next subject. You go to permanent cities, and we don't want these things in our city. But we want all the good stuff that comes with it, but we don't want a small cell in our city. I don't want that antenna in my right of way, right? And you can't do it. You can't do one without the other. You can't get the technology to the user without getting the fiber and the equipment that's needed to get the technology to the user out there. And you've got to put this technology on the right of way. Otherwise, it doesn't work, right? And so it's funny to me and my team how much red tape we have to go through, how many roadblocks we have to go through in almost every city to try and get equipment installed in the right of way. And we're trying to tell all the cities, hey, this is for the benefit of the people that live in your city, of your police departments. Oh no, I don't want that ugly thing. Have you seen it? No, I don't care. And those are the kind of answers we get. And we have to try and educate everybody on what the equipment is, the size of the equipment, and the fact that it's needed. You can't want to have all these things that this gentleman Lenny are talking about and not want the equipment out there. You've got to have the equipment out there, and the providers of the services are doing everything they can to make these things smaller and smaller and hit it to help. But we need your help in talking to the city officials, saying, hey, you've got to allow these things in the right way, or else the smart city is not going to happen.
Sounds like we could have had a panel for some of our
city
employees and all that as well. some elected officials, we get a
Yeah, we just did it, Stan and I did it in Orlando, right?
That's right.
Talking to the city officials there.
So really, you know, if you think about what's happening around the world, European and Asian cities tend to be ahead of American cities. And one of the reasons is because government is behind a lot of the change that's happening in other places. So we're really just approaching that inflection point here in the US where the cities and counties are beginning to realize that it is a technology-enabled world, and if you don't put the technology in, you're not going to get the benefits from it.
You're not gonna get it.
Right.
So I mean, I do have cities coming to me and saying, hey, you know, we hear you're doing this stuff, and we want to be the first smart city. We want to put in these technologies, and you know, one of the things that we're looking at doing is establishing an innovation district where we can test new technologies and put them against one another and find out, you know, whether or not they actually deliver on their promises, right? Sometimes we bought something and it didn't quite work out like the commercial sector, right? So we want to test them, make sure they're doing what we think they're doing, as well as be able to show what they look like, how they respond in action, put up, you know, big kiosks so that we can let people.
So Lenny, this is so you're talking about the innovation district you're talking about creating.
Well, and the reason why I go there is that as part of that, you know, we want to look at, well, how can we integrate the small cells into that environment, right? And be able to show people what it could look like and how it can be done right, and integrate them into like street lights and, like you mentioned, trees and other things, and basically say, hey, do you see the infrastructure here? You know, it can be done in a way that isn't just a bunch of wooden poles with a sensor strapped on them that, you know, maybe people would be objecting to, right? But we can show them how you can incorporate these technologies and, you know, have people understand what's happening, explain to them what's being done at that intersection, get their feedback, you know, do behavioral studies, because, you know, again, it's one of those things where if we don't do certain things, we may need the digital Rust Belt, right? But we also have to be able to get public buy-in and acceptance and help people understand that we're not going to ruin their life, we're not going to ruin their neighborhood. You know, we actually are trying to enhance the quality of life here. And so part of the, you know, the innovation district, and I can, you know, explain more about that, is being an example for how that can be done.
So we got about 10 minutes left. So you guys have any questions from the audience? Go for it.
I had a question. I have actually two questions, potentially three, but the whole being dangerous for you part, is that because it emits EMF? Is that the reasoning?
Yeah, you know, radio frequency, it's like a microwave, right? It heats up things. It heats up the cells. So if you're standing in the direct line of sight within 5 feet of a radio antenna, and obviously the bigger it is, the stronger the signal, then it could be harmful to the individual. But again, you have to be standing in front of it for an extended period of time, right? It's not like you go in front of a signal and birds aren't gonna die by flying in front of the signal. That's the other misconception. Well, birds are gonna die because they fly in front of the 5G signal. No, that's not gonna happen.
What about the technician that's up 21 to 35 feet exposed to it?
Perfect. I'm glad you asked that question. So technicians, the folks who work on these, first of all, are trained in RF safety. That's the first thing they're trained on. Second, they're trained on all aspects of working in, you know, safety of heights, RF technology, and RF exposure and whatnot. But every antenna that a technician is going to work at gets turned off the network, and traffic to that antenna is diverted to other antennas so individuals can work on that site free of risk. So the way the process works is you call in 2 hours in advance before you're gonna work at a site. The site gets turned off by the carriers because the carriers are very, very clear and very aware of safety, and they want to make sure their technicians are safe. So 2 hours before you call in, the site gets taken down. You get a clear notice from the carrier. This site is down. You approach the site and you look at the equipment. That's the lights change colors when the signal is off, and then you can commence to work. And even then, before you stand in front of these antennas, you make sure you unplug everything. So there's a process. So our technicians are always safe with regards to RF signal when working at a site.
Kind of like FPL, make sure the power's off before you come on the cable.
And just to add, there's also a maintenance window where
Right.
most of these sites are maintained, typically in the early parts of the day, 2 or 3 in the morning, where the
Right.
so it doesn't affect traffic.
So I'm going to ask this, and then we'll take another question. Stan, you mentioned maybe we'll talk about what are some of the emerging trends that maybe you guys see. Again, you guys work across the country. What are some of the emerging trends that you see in smart city stuff? And then we'll take a question after. Go ahead.
That's a great question. So as you know, working in a lot of different places, I think what's happening now in the cities that are becoming the most successful in their smart city implementations, it becomes a regional effort. You know, cities by themselves or counties. When I say city, I often mean the county too.
Right.
You know, every city can't afford the level of data scientists required to build a data backend system by themselves. You know, getting more of an out-of-the-box solution that can handle a lot of different use cases is a great idea. And cooperating between cities or between places that are trying to do the same things begins to make a lot of sense. So these regional efforts, particularly in things like funding and building data systems, building transportation systems, is becoming a big deal.
Well, what's one of those things that we would see? So, what's it really? What am I really going to see? What's the next thing that I'm like, wow, that's really cool? We talked about the signalization. To me, that's like number one, and that and safety. But what are some of the things? I'm not sure you guys in the audiences are. When you're thinking about smart city, what's the one thing that you'd like to see improve in the community?
No red lights.
What's that?
No red lights.
No red lights.
I can go
just
right
on your own.
without stopping.
Better waste management.
Better waste management? Really? Interesting. What's it? So what is something that we should expect to see that we will actually notice that's going to be a part of the smart city?
One of the big trends, you probably notice these little scooters on every corner, right?
Never saw.
It's part of a mobility system, right? But it's not very well coordinated. So mobility as a service is one of those emerging trends. I want to get somewhere. I don't necessarily want to take my own car. How do I do it? I want to pay once. I want to have good routing, sort of like ways for the system. I have multiple ways of getting somewhere. Part of the problem is that we don't really have an infrastructure yet in a lot of places. Florida's a big state. I live in Bradenton. I try to get to Tampa all the time. There's no direct way for me to get there. I can come down here, but I got to on a train. But I got to drive to Tampa to get on a train. So mobility as a service, I think, is one of those things that we will begin to see solutions for in the next 10 years that's helping.
So I would just say from the county perspective, for us, it's kind of trying to get away from two-dimensional paper maps and bring things into 3D using virtual reality and augmented reality, and basically be able to show people what we're going to be doing and get their feedback, but show them what it actually is going to look like, right? So, using drones and image capture technology to basically say, okay, this is what it looks like today, here's how we're going to change it, and then, being able to, let's say, hold up your phone and, on the side of the bus stop, kind of like the Pokemon Go can appear, in the public sphere. You hold it up on the side of the bus stop and it'll tell you when the next bus is coming and where it's going and when the bus after that is coming. Or, you can hold it up like many of us might see a bus on our way to work every day, wonder where it comes from or where it goes to, and be able to hold up your phone and it'll say on the side of the bus number and where it's going and where it came from, and just being able to have this kind of intuitive understanding about the environment that you're in and being able to integrate it without having to figure out how to use the bus schedule or how to get a ticket and where to go. And you don't have to download an app and you don't have to go to our website or have this long link. It's just this idea that we can give you place-based notifications and data, including like sea level rise and flooding and other things that you want to be aware of in your surroundings. So to us, it's about engaging with the public, getting public acceptance, doing behavioral studies, and providing the kind of access to data in a way that the public can get it and put it to use.
Hi, sounds really exciting. It sounds really exciting, all of this. I'd love to see some of these things happening. And I know you guys in time will have these innovative structures and we won't even see all these smart cells. And while we all carry one of these in our hands, how do you address the privacy issue where somebody might say, I don't want to be tracked everywhere? I mean, are we already tracked? Is that a moot point?
Right.
How do you address it for our sake?
So the question is about being tracked, kind of like Big Brother.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
And if you don't want to be tracked,
How do you avoid that?
yeah.
Right,
Throw
so
away your phone.
Turn it off.
yeah. So the bottom line is that from our perspective, right, privacy is a major concern, and also To me, a smart city is not a surveillance city. It's not about tracking people, right? It's about looking at the way that people are using the infrastructure. I'll give you an example. We're partnering with the University of Florida. They have a National Science Foundation grant. And you know, a lot of today's cameras and AI, all they do is count people, right? And they can look at faces, and they can look at cars, and they can look at license plates. And you know, there's all of this information that's really based on the video and the idea that they can see the image and store the video. And we have no intention of storing any video or images or using facial recognition. This is not anything to do with law enforcement. And that's what's really nice about the, a lot of people call it next-gen technology that we can use that the University of Florida is pioneering. And basically what we're doing is, instead of capturing images of people, we're basically saying, okay, that's a person, let's turn it into a green dot. That's a car, it's a blue dot. That's a bus, it's a gray dot. That's a, you know, and it anonymizes everything, and it turns it into a series of dots on a black background. And then you've got these trace lines that show, okay, here's how the pedestrian went across the road, and here's how the bus almost collided with the pedestrian. And then we can start to count those kinds of interactions and say, you know, maybe there's a safety problem at this intersection, even though we don't have a bunch of deaths or a bunch of actual accidents. We can tell based on this technology that we're having a lot of near collisions, and maybe we should prioritize it, right? And then do the improvement and say, hey, did that actually produce the benefit that we thought it did? So we can figure out what's working and what isn't working, and are we getting good value for money? So it's not about, like I said, knowing you and seeing you, or going back and looking and being able to see your face or your tag. It's actually just going to turn it into a anonymized series of dots so we can tell what's happening without actually seeing who or what kind of vehicle or anything like that.
All right. So we, any last thoughts? Because we are about out of time. Go ahead, Karel.
No, just real quick. You know, contrary to public perception, thank you. The cities and the carriers and the counties, they're not really, you know, trying to take private information. I don't know, I'm not in that. I just build the network, but I can tell you that the counties, the cities, they're not interested in knowing where this person is or that person. They're just interested in the masses and how to help the folks. And, you know, we build networks all over the nation. I have not seen one city or one county try to store personal information of individuals. They don't want it. There's no use for it, really.
They're not trying to sell you something.
You know, and we're not, you know, they're not trying to sell it. But when someone is in need of police help, they want the police to catch that bad guy real quick. But how do you know, if you don't want the technology used for you, you get it. It's a tough world to be in. You know, if you don't want to be tracked, don't carry the cell phone. But I can tell you that the cities and the counties and the carriers are not trying to track people.
More often than not, it's the apps that you use that are tracking you.
The apps are the ones that are. It's all about selling you something, right? They're trying to track everything you're trying to buy, so they want to sell you something.
All right. If you guys, if you have any other questions, these guys will be around for a little bit, so grab them and help me thank our panel for taking time to talk to us. Thank you.